Now with Bruce Hendricks, a lawyer at Hendricks-Harmse Attorneys. A very good afternoon to you, so excuse me. As a night worker, I've got evening stuck on my mind, but help us understand what's going on here, because I'm looking at the statement. It says that the board has granted Pistorius a further profile for August 2024. The reason provided is that the inmate did not complete the minimum detention period as ruled by the Supreme Court of Appeal. What does that mean?
Well, it seems like it's a technical issue that was raised. One has to question as to how they came to such a decision so quickly, taking into account that the hearing only took place a few hours ago. If that had to be the case, why did they have the parole hearing in the first place? One should question as to why, what was the procedure, because before you can have a parole hearing, a lot of things needs to be completed. The offender or the inmate has to undergo certain programs, etc., and then they do what they call, they schedule an appointment for you to see the parole board or the CMC, the Case Management Supervision Group of the Correctional Services. So if the issue is one of time as to the minimum period that had to be served, that had to be predetermined in order to get to a parole hearing already. So that is a bit of an issue that I think the family should, or maybe they will take it on a review to the courts to determine that issue.
So this basically means that he can have another go, another application, am I right to say, come August next year?
Yeah, so what it means when he gets another date is that on the next date, the parole board will have a sitting again, and all the parties, like the family, because that's what normally happens at these parole hearings, the family of the victim or the deceased gets an opportunity to state how they feel. They try and have a victim-offender reintegration. It's also a process where the victim or the family can try and engage with the offender to see whether the person is indeed remorseful, and also maybe get closure or clarity on certain issues, the why it was done, what happened, etc. That can be canvassed during that hearing. There's also a spiritual leader, someone from the community, the police. So a lot of role players sit on this case management setting in order to determine whether someone is indeed suitable to be released out on parole. So that is what will happen in August 2024, it appears again.
And we've had parole laws and input and the feeling of family tested in the last few months, especially when you look at the Chris Hani situation where Newzroom was basically denied bail, not bail, but parole, because there was a feeling that he's not been completely honest about what happened when Chris Hani was murdered in 1993. The Hani family still feels that he's still not shown any remorse and is unworthy, but the Constitutional Court said that there is also a need to balance the feelings of families, loved ones, as well as the rights of the offender.
Yes, 100%. So that's but one of the factors that need to be taken into account. And look, everyone is equal before the law, if you have regard to our Constitution, Section 9. So whether it's Oscar Pistorius or the normal person on the street, the parole board or those entertaining this application to be released or the hearing, they should look at various factors such as remorse. They should look at whether the person can be rehabilitated, reintegrated into society. They should also see whether there is a risk of reoffending. And based on that, they can make a value judgment whether the person can indeed be placed on parole again. So a lot of these times, look, emotions will play a role either side of the families, whether it's the victim or the offender. Like it was said previously, both sides has missed Christmases and Easter and all of those important dates. However, it's something that must be viewed objectively in light of all the circumstances. They need to look at the crime that was committed or offended, the period served, as well as those factors that I've just mentioned. And ultimately, parole or correctional supervision is not an easy sentence. It's a sentence where someone gets released with conditions. So basically, you are in prison but at home, and you are allowed to do certain things like go to religious meetings and go to work, etc. However, your normal life is quite limited in that you cannot go partying, you cannot drink alcohol, you cannot use drugs or anything like that. You need to be home. There's visitation by your case manager. The Department of Correctional Services actually assigns someone that monitors you, and if there is any transgression, such as you're not at home or they find you under the influence, it gets taken up, and normally it gets rewarded with a warning, first warning, verbal warning, and then you get brought to court. If you abscond, there's a charge where they actually issue a warrant for you, and you go back to court, and they can revoke your parole. You serve the remainder of your sentence, and you get charged for the absconding as well. So, all in all, it's not an easy sentence to have because of the risk that you might be placed back in the correctional facility.
Right. So parole is not full freedom, it's limited freedom because you are still serving your sentence
Absolutely.
On the outside. But just on the conditions that one would have to adhere to when out on parole, is it a one-size-fits-all, or does the profile of the inmate, the offender, influence how much freedom they're given?
Absolutely. So one would like to think that everyone's equal before the law, and justice involves a lot of fairness. But if you look at someone like Oscar Pistorius, he served half of his sentence already. Definitely there is some sort of influence when you look at his character, the type of person, the profile of the person that you're dealing with. As a criminal practitioner that deals with criminal every day, you do get people that's out on the charge of murder and then reoffends and gets found with a firearm. Such a person might even get bail again and then just report back to his correctional supervision case manager. So I would say that a lot of people, if you look at the different charges and the things that I see on a daily basis, there's a lot of people that's for much worse matters before court or in prison, and they get released after on parole. We also have circumstances, we've seen it recently, where people are released on bail for rape or murder, serious charges, and that then those persons reoffend or recommit the same offences. So there is an issue when it comes to correctional supervision and parole boards and how and what they consider when releasing a person. Right.
Just lastly, we touched on this right at the beginning. The hearing happened today, but we're now hearing that there was an issue about the timeline, basically, as far as to when Oscar Pistorius would basically hit that point in his sentence where he would be eligible for parole. And I wonder if, and we're waiting for clarity, I must just say to our viewers from Correctional Services to give a briefing, because all we're working on now is a 2-line statement confirming he's been denied parole, basically. Could he use the fact that today was, for all intents and purposes, a bit of a dud, could he use that to argue against the process followed?
Well, normally when you await trial, those time periods doesn't get considered when you either released out on bail. Even if you appeal your sentence only we only start serving it once you have a judgment or the decision of the appeal. Or what he can state, or what should be taken into account, is the amount that he's already served. The programs that he has done in prison, you will note that the correctional centers have various programs. They have anger management, they have different skill sets that they so you literally have to look at whether he has ticked all these boxes. Once that has been done, and I mean, if he served half of his sentence, the 50% of it, he should then be eligible for parole. But like I say, there's other factors that the parole board should take into account. If one had to look at the 2-liner, like you say, that was given as reasons for the denial, I would certainly request that further reasons be provided, because these parole hearings, it's quite intense. There's a lot of documents that get submitted, all the programs, the person. So obviously, Mr. Pistorius would be entitled to proper reasoning as to why his parole was denied again.
Bruce Hendricks, thank you so much for that. Speaking to us about the breaking news this afternoon, Oscar Pistorius not going to be released on parole just yet.